Hi there, my name is Kendrick and welcome to another interview. And today I will interview Brennen. So Brennen, welcome, man.
Hello.
So Brennen, can you tell us your full type, please?
Yes, so I have been typed as ISTP, T-I-Se, and then it's consume, play, blast, sleep, double feminine, so FF.
All right. And then when you got your results, what did you think and how did you feel?
I was honestly kind of like, do these guys even know what they're doing type of thing? But then I started rationalizing it and I started like seeing how it kind of made sense. It wasn't completely far off of what I originally was thinking, but at the same time, it wasn't in my like list of possibilities of what I thought I was. And so I was just more, it was more skepticism. It's like I was open to the idea that that was true, but I was like very skeptical about it at first. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can trust these people's opinion on me when they don't even know me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that way when they get their results.
Yeah.
Because it
Like
can,
how can they make it off of such little information?
right, right. We're doing a little bit something special today. So Brennan just got his results. So we're gonna process his type together. Um, I know some people were complaining, oh, you're interviewing people that just got type, they haven't given time to process it. Well, today we're gonna process it, live. So it should be fun. The first thing I want to cover for you, Brennan, is our types are actually very similar because we're both double feminine play and double masculine sleep, right? So um, let's go talk about your double feminine play because it's double activated. Your double activated, double feminine SF play, right?
Hmm?
Do you resonate with that when you got that part of your type?
Yeah. Yeah, if I understand, I mean, part of the problem was that I was kind of researching the play of like the types that I thought I was. So SF play wasn't high up there, but SF play was something that I researched for my wife, who I believe is an ENFJ.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, SF play, I can definitely see it's kind of just, correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically just like witty banter and kind of like goofing around like with other people and kind of being like, maybe is it sarcasm, like kind of sarcasm?
Yeah, I mean
Is
it
that
could
wrong?
be. It's a whole bunch of different stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it could be something as dumb as like making weird noises, to like, like just making fun of someone's style because it's SF, right? But it could also
Mhm.
be like tracking what's popular, what the tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, like a lot of people who are like your type, like your quadra, they're very good at tracking. Like Gary V, for example, like very good at
Mm.
tracking what's popular, and then kind of like let's say you have a business, then you can cater to what's popular in current time.
Yeah. I think I do have that because especially when I'm like researching things like related to, like for instance, I want to own an Airbnb here in the next year. And I think I have a pretty good grasp on what's like what people like, but at the same time, I'm like, I overthink it and I'm like, do people actually like that? Because like at the same time, I feel like sometimes I think that somebody would like something that I like, but they don't. You know what I mean? And I think that's the introverted thinking with the FE demon.
Okay, well, why don't before we go deep into play, why don't we go over
Mhm.
like the more obvious one here, which is you being an IP. So
Yeah.
if you're an IP, that means you have people problems, and your biggest fear would be tribe hate or like the tribe ganging up on you or kicking you out of the
Mhm.
tribe, right? So can you talk about that
Yeah.
fear a little bit and like how does that, how do you?
Yeah. So that's funny because I was rationalizing that before. Like when I was trying to guess my type, I always type myself as an EP. So I always type myself as like an EP, like an ENTP or an ENFP or something like that. Um, and yeah, I mean, yeah, but now that I'm looking back at it, my entire life has been kind of like the story of like the Lone Ranger, like somebody who is constantly like kind of ostracized from society. At least it's felt like that. I don't know. I think part of it is my fault, but also part of it is other people's fault of like not being like, like the thing of like not accepting people in. And so like I felt like throughout elementary, especially elementary, I actually had a point of popularity within my small private school that I was at. But it was short-lived, like in middle school. But I never craved popularity. I like never wanted to be like the popular kid, but I also never wanted to be like the ostracized kid. So I kind of wanted to just be my own person without being like super criticized for being my own person. I guess you could say that. So I guess, yeah, I do. And I've been thinking about that today because I've only been able to process this in the last, 8 hours, but I processed a lot of it, of this ISTP thing, because yeah, I do think that I have a lot of my trauma seems to be linked to like other people and my ostracization, feeling like I can't be who I am, like feeling limited by other people, feelings of like people just being complete jerks to me. But at the same time, I've had other people that have confirmed to me that that it wasn't all in my head or anything. Like, so sometimes I'm like, well, was that all in my head? Am I just like thinking that everybody hates me, or is it true? And people have confirmed that people bullied me growing up. And so like people would like pick on me and like not let me have, because I would say what's on my mind. And so I don't think a lot of people can handle that level of like openness and bluntness. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, your type definitely gets a lot of tribe hate, especially if
Yeah.
you don't practice that extrovert feeling. It's kind of tricky because like one of my best friends is, and it's like I think he's the same type as you actually, and oh my God, tribe hate to the max. Like we were in high school, like our whole grade 9 wanted to kill him essentially. Like we're playing basketball and they just started running after him. So I mean, if that's not the definition of tribe hate, I don't know what is. And then even now we're older, like he's done so much fucked up things that like we kind of like ostracize him for a bit, put him in like the timeout box, and then when he learns to behave like a good human, and we let him back in. So it's like like I think the problem with the ISTP is like you're not aware of how the tribe perceives you maybe, and I
Yeah.
think I think that causes like the issue. But I also get what you're saying about like being you and stuff, and that's also super important, right? I think the problem lies with like not being balanced with like the self and the tribe. So why don't we cover that a little bit? So do you have trouble seeing the tribe's perspective?
I don't feel like I do, but sometimes people accuse me of that. Like I think that I have a hard time. Well, so at the same time, I understand. I at least feel like I understand other people's emotions, and I absorb a lot of emotional data that's floating around. I think that's the FE, which I don't really like. I don't really like absorbing all the emotional data, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop somebody from like doing that. But it's with negative things that I perceive as negative emotions, like anger, resentment, like, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. That stuff kind of compiles on me, and it's like hard to hold all of that, and I don't always know how to deal with it. And I think I was just watching one of the ISTP videos from Objective Personality of like how I need like regular therapy in order to get out all of the emotion. And actually, it's funny because one of the things that actually helped me rationalize my type of ISTP was NF, Nathan Fierstein.
Right, right.
So he's my favorite rapper of all time. And like all of the stuff that he talks about, I can resonate with. Like, most of the stuff is like he's talking about it's real music for him. And I actually write my own poetry and my own like rapping type of stuff. It's more private to me. Like I don't actually broadcast it unless like maybe my close friends or something. But I definitely identify with this is therapy for me type of thing. Like he literally references like writing all this stuff in a rhythmic way for some reason is therapeutic for me. Like it helps me reconcile what I'm feeling, and it kind of like I'm spitting it out on paper in an artistic way, and then I'm able to read it through and kind of release that.
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
think that was NF Blast right there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely some NF blast there because I think if you were Nate, you wouldn't have been able to explain it the way that you just did. And then I don't know if you watched the John Jones video also. He's an ISTP also, and also, you know, same advice, like he's seeing therapy, and that seems to make a big difference. Just
Was
getting,
that the MMA fighter?
yeah, the MMA fighter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
greatest MMA fighter of all time, I think, is John Jones. So yeah, ISTP, of course. Like all the best fighters are ISTP, right? And then
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that was that's one of the things. I mean, I know it's stereotypical and I know it's archetypes and stuff. That was the biggest thing that I had a hard time with was the SE thing,
Yeah.
because I really don't feel like an SE user on the stereotype of liking sports and stuff. Like, yeah, I did sports growing up, but like most of that was honestly to like impress my dad. Like literally, like most of it was just like, oh yeah, I'll do sports because my dad says it's a cool thing to do, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, he seems to only be impressed by that, and so like I'm gonna do that. And so I liked sports. Like don't get me wrong, it's not like I hated sports, but there was a point where I was like, do I actually like this? Like, is this actually something that I actually want to do, or am I doing it to impress people?
Yeah.
And I figured out that it was because I was just trying to impress people with like things, but I wasn't ever like the best at it. And that's what also frustrated me, is that I would try, I felt like I was trying, and even my dad acknowledged that I was trying harder than like anybody. Like I was such a try hard, but I would never be able to be the best. And that always annoyed me. Like I was always like maybe above average, or maybe like in the top, maybe in second or third place. But I could never reach first place in sports specifically. And that kind of bugged me, because I have always had a competitive spirit of like, but then I'm realizing now that it's like, who do I have to prove myself to? Why do I feel like I need to prove myself all the time? And I think it's a masculine thing, of like the masculine culture of, you need to do this to feel, you need to look cool to the tribe, and you have to like do this certain thing. And I've embarrassed myself before trying to like do things, like trying to do stunts, or like trying to do like just things that I think might impress people, but it doesn't end up impressing anybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think you should like beat yourself up for it, because if you look at MMA, before John Jones was considered the best fighter was actually double feminine.
Mhm.
I forgot Anderson Silva. I don't know if he's an ESTP or ESFP. I forgot. He's a jumper, tribe of himself, but he's double feminine. So that you do have a potential. You just have to do it. The problem with like I think a lot of ISTPs though is like with like the ST consume, is like you have a tendency to copy what's working. So
Mhm.
it's like Nate, right? Like Nate is an awesome rapper, but you also can't help but think he copied Eminem, because the
Yeah.
way he raps, it sounds like Eminem.
Yeah.
So
Well, and Eminem, isn't ISTP too?
no, Eminem is an INFJ jumper, but same
Oh
function
yeah,
stack as
yeah.
you.
NITI.
Yeah, but the same function stack, like
Yeah.
same like quadra as you, right? So you would resonate with him too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like I think Eminem's original, right? So I think as an IC you can be original, but you have to tap into like a different part of your brain, I think, to like make that, you know.
That's actually something that I've thought about, is that I used to think like, especially when I thought I was like an ENTP or something, I was thinking like, oh, the ENTP, he's like this super original person. Like that's the first word that comes to mind with an ENTP.
Yeah.
And I'm not original, I'm innovative. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between inventing something and innovating on something. I don't find myself inventing things very often. I simply look at what already exists and I improve it, or I make it more practical for me. You know what I mean? Like, or practical for the tribe, if that's what I'm trying to sell or whatever.
um I did a panel interview about all the IPs. I don't know if you remember that one, but there's a big difference between IPs that are TI and FI. So
Mhm.
the TIs want to be the best, while the FIs want to be the most unique and different, right? So
Yeah.
both want to stand out from the crowd, but in a different way. So because you have TI, it's masculine TI. I want to talk about your desire to stand out, and why would you prefer to be the best as opposed to being original? Because both can achieve the goal of standing out. But as an ITP, it seems like being the best is the obvious choice. Not all ISTPs, of course. A lot of ISTPs
Yeah.
also make movies, right? What's that guy's name? The Clint Eastwood is an ISTP, for example.
Yeah.
So or like, yeah, so it's that you can stand out, you can go that route, but it seems like the typical ISTP prefers that being the best. So can you talk about that? Like, how do you see yourself like trying to be the best as opposed to, standing out?
I mean, I think I've vacillated between those two desires, right? Of like wanting to be the best and then wanting to be the most unique.
Right,
Because
right.
I do find that there are times when I'm like, I want to be unique. Like I don't want to be, but I think that stems from like a inferior FE thing of like not wanting to blend in with the tribe. Like I don't really want to be just like everybody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm fine with being similar to other people, but like at the same time, I don't really want to just be another person that's like everybody else. I know it's kind of stupid, but like I've made fun of like certain trends in the past of like, why would I want to just follow a trend just because everybody else is doing it? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that I don't know. As I've matured, I've kind of moved out of that a little bit. Like I still have like part of that in me of like wanting to be the best, but at the same time, I've kind of like reconciled that it's not always possible to be the best. I think after as many failures as I've had, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but like I feel like it's okay to be second or third place sometimes. It feels kind of weird to say because it's like I want to be first place deep down, but at the same time, and I don't want to be seen as like I'm giving up or something.
Yeah.
But like I think it's okay to not be the best at what I'm doing. And I definitely have very competitive, and honestly, like I've suffered from like the Dunning-Kruger effect of like thinking I'm the best when I just learned the basics of something, right?
Right.
Like I go like when I was learning the beginning of when I just went into MBTI, for instance, like the 16 personality stuff, I thought I was so cool because I thought I knew everything about it because I read a few articles.
Right.
And then I'm going on now. I've been in this for 4 years and I've learned so many different systems, learned so many different things. I feel stupider than I was at the beginning. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm the best or the most, like, obviously I think you're more knowledgeable on especially objective personality. And so like, I would never claim that I'm the best anymore. I think I've stepped down from claiming to be the best at everything because I know that there's always going to be a bigger dog. There's
Right.
always going to be somebody else that's better than you at something.
Yeah.
So I've kind of just reconciled that as like, I'm going to be the best that I can be, not better than other people, but the best that I can be.
Right. I think in a way, like admitting that you are not the best makes you the most unique ISTP, because not an ISTPs would want to ever admit that, right? So like
Yeah.
it's kind of like a weird paradox or irony, like the ISTP that said, you know what, I'll just be second and that's fine. Now you're the most unique ISTP. It's weird, and it like kind of contradicts like what you're, what you are naturally programmed to do, right? But it's like now you're actually going the right path of what you actually want, which is so weird. Now I want to talk about the idea of being unique and being the best though. So you have extrovert feeling in the bottom, and deep down inside, everyone desires that fourth function, like whatever it is that makes you happy. Because the first function is easy as hell, right? Because that's your default, right? And then the two in the middle is your superpower because you're balanced with like gathering and organizing. But then the fourth one, that's where the magic happens. Now, your fourth one is extrovert feeling. That means deep down inside, what you really want is not really to be the best, or I mean, maybe being the best is one of the things that you want, but the other thing that you really want is to connect with other people emotionally. And you have double activate FE, so clearly you're going to be pursuing that more aggressively than other ISTPs who are pretending that they don't want that when they actually do. So can you talk about that, like desire to connect with people emotionally and feeling like togetherness and whatnot, and
Yeah, I definitely identify with the desire to like, I don't like to say that I want it. You know what I mean? Like I don't like to admit that I do want connection, because then that means that I have to be vulnerable
Yeah.
with people. And vulnerability is difficult when I'm not extreme. Like the only person I found to be truly that I can feel truly be like the most safe with is like my wife. Like she's like the only one that I truly like feel like I can be completely vulnerable. But even times I feel like she's gonna judge me or like not accept me. Like, I mean, I think I definitely understand the feeling of, and I didn't even really, I was kind of blind to it before even today, of like the tribe dynamic of thinking everybody's going to reject me and stuff. And it kind of I mean, if you're thinking about it, if I'm constantly thinking that, regardless of if it's true, then it's going to eventually manifest as reality, right? And so I think that I definitely have a desire to connect with people, and friendship is something that I always lacked. Like I always only had, growing up, I was in a private, super small private Christian school, like elementary through middle school. And so I only had one best friend, and everybody else was kind of just friends or acquaintances. I don't really view anybody as like outside unless they truly offend me. So like I think every time I meet someone, I always put them on this like neutral playing field. And like if they do something that is completely offensive to me in the sense that they're personally harming me, or they're doing something that like goes against everything that I am, then I'll probably, in my head, I'll probably put them lower on the totem pole of who I value. But I feel like most people just make instant snap judgments when they see people, and they just like instantly say, you're below me because you look a certain way or you talk a certain way. You know what I mean? And I don't care about how you look or talk or whatever. Like, sure, it might be uncomfortable to be talking to the person that looks or talks different or is odd or whatever. But at the end of the day, everybody deserves to be like part of something. And so like, I don't know. I've always tried to include people if I can. I've always been kind of like the fighter. Like I always fight for the underdog type. Because I've been there. I've been the underdog, and I feel like a lot of my life is like, I feel like I defend, like my little brother, for instance. I would defend my little brother even against like accusations from my dad would like think he was doing something, and I would like defend my brother. It's like, no, he wasn't doing that. And then but I felt like he would never defend me. Like I always felt like I was defending other people, but then they wouldn't really reciprocate. And so that's where it kind of got sucky of like, well, why do I even try? You know what I mean? Like, why would I want to be friends with someone and try for that friendship if they're just going to reject me or not defend me or like not do anything? Like, why would they not reciprocate that level of commitment to one another? You know what I mean? And that's what's always been kind of difficult for me.
I think the way David Chan explained it is a lot of IPs feel like they're doing a lot for the tribe, but in reality, it's like only this much. So when you feel like you're defending someone, the tribe actually just sees you as like, okay, you've done a little bit, but I still have this much to go actually. So we're still not balanced. I'm not going to defend you because you haven't met the quota yet. So
Yeah,
it's
that
like,
kind of hurts.
what's that?
Not you, but like that, just the feeling of that, like that kind of like, it's
Yeah,
like I feel like when people do say that, like when people do that, I feel
yeah,
like devalued, like I can't like contribute anything, like everything that I was seeing like there was like an ISTP explanation of like the ISTP fear thing. I think it was an objective personality, and they were like describing like how the ISTP will be out like in a shed working on something for the tribe, right? They'll be working on a book or
yeah,
whatever it is. And then they'll like think they're putting so much effort into this thing, and they're putting so much like emotion and like trying to make it as not good as possible for everybody. And then they show it to the tribe, and the tribe is like, where were you? You didn't spend any time with us. And
yeah,
so like then it's like, well, crap, I just like literally put my heart into this thing to try to help you, but
yeah.
then apparently that was the wrong thing to do. You know what I mean?
I think you didn't ask the tribe first what they wanted. You
Yeah.
assume what they wanted, and then you made this thing, and then now they're like, dude, we didn't want that. But
Yeah.
recently they did a class in Keanu Reeves, right? So he is like the perfect template of an ISTP that is doing that FE right. So
Yeah.
like, there's like a template for you now, like to follow, because like there you go. There's this guy, he's like super tribe, like he's an ISTP, but he's doing so much for the tribe, right? So, and he's doing it right apparently. So like, it's good to see like, oh, there you go. That's like the map right there, Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Did you watch that video yet about the Keanu Reeves one?
I
It just came
don't
out.
think I saw that one.
Yeah, it just came out, and then they kind of talked about how he's like, oh, this guy's an ISTP, and the whole tribe loves him, right? Like
Well,
no one,
I always thought he was like like an ISTP, like, because just, I mean, stereotypically what he acts in, right? Like he always doing like he's always playing the badass in movies, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I was like, I could see why an INFP, because he's always typed as INFP in most communities.
right, right.
But I can see definitely how he could be an ISTP, because most people just think ISTPs are just these jerks
Yeah,
that don't know anything about how to interact with people.
yeah,
And I mean, I I tend to be very kind to people. Like I tend to try to be like very nice to people until they push some kind of rude boundary or something that I feel, but it's usually pretty intense. Like I'm not offended easily. So like it's usually when people are like just completely pushing my buttons just to be a jerk to me, like
right.
purposely trying to like prod the bull, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so like it's just that is an interesting dichotomy that I do feel. Even I thought, because I separated myself from that identity of ISTP, and so even I thought, how could I be an ISTP if I'm not, like I feel like the stereotype is that ISTPs are just socially inept, and that's not necessarily true. They might struggle with certain emotional aspects of socialization, but I don't think that ISTPs are completely inept to being able to succeed in the world of emotional harmony.
yeah. Well, I mean, definitely not. I mean, there's ISTPs that are socially fluid, Conor McGregor is an ISTP and so good with people, right? You know,
Mm.
so that
I always thought he was an ESTP when I was like just doing my own typing,
yeah,
just because he seems to be the stereotype of like the Chad, or like, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like the guy going out and like I always thought, I don't know, I just always thought stereotypically he was an ESTP, but I could also see ISTP as well for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, ISTPs, ESTPs, those are like the Chad types, right? Even you could
Exactly.
argue ESFPs also, ISFPs. Um, you're definitely typed correctly because you're using the word judgment a lot. So, like if you were like an EP, I mean, you type yourself as an EP originally, and you are
Mhm.
an EP, you're like an IP EP, right? So it's not, it is your like subtype, but it's not your main one. But you're also double activated on the tribe. So I guess you would get less tribe hate than the average ISTP. Um,
Yeah. I don't think that people hate me all the time. It was more just when I was less social. Like, I mean, I went through a period like back in age 18, 19, 20, 21, because I'm 22 now. I just turned 22 a month ago, or less than a month ago. But those years I kind of went through like a huge like social transformation of like, I literally I researched charisma and stuff like that. And I like watched, have you ever seen Charisma on Command
I heard of the
on
chat.
YouTube?
I've heard
Yeah,
of
I watched a lot of his stuff, and I watched a bunch of like the SF popularity type videos
yeah,
of like, and I went through a whole phase. I even got a fashion sense. I started wearing the right clothes. I started wearing the right combinations. I started working on my body. Like before, I was kind of chubby, and I didn't really, like, I would do sports, but I was never like shredded. I never had a body of an athlete. I always was just like kind of chunky. And I was made fun of that a lot, like especially in swim. Like
yeah,
people would always make fun of me because I was like this. I was chunky, and I was also limiting my ability. And then after I got all bulked up, and after I hit my prime of freaking lifting, then all of the old guys on the swim team started respecting me more, and they were like, "Dude, you look great." Like I was like, if you, why don't you respect me when I'm just like, I didn't like that they were only respecting me after off this superficial thing of like
yeah.
being more ripped or whatever. I've lost a little bit of it, and I've gained a lot of weight in the last year, but I'm trying to get back to where I was. But another thing is that weightlifting is not like my identity. Like, I mean, I guess that makes sense because that'd be more of an ESTP thing of like SE being more involved in their life, right? Um,
It's a masculine sensory thing, not necessarily like
Masculine sensory, because I have feminine sensory.
yeah. Because introvert sensing
Feminine sensory, yeah.
masculine will also be into weightlifting. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so that makes sense with the feminine sensor, because I haven't really put a lot of value. Like I like what weightlifting does for me. Like I like that I can look good or feel good, and it also helps with my mental and emotional states. to lift and stuff like that. But like, it's not something that is like a huge passion and I'm like a gym bro or anything like that. Because it's just, I'm more interested in like the psychology of things and why things work. That's why I'm kind of confused why the type me as Ti-Se, but at the same time, I kind of was reconciling how SE is like facts, not just the sensory. Like it's not necessarily just punching a bag or running a marathon. It's gathering information, like factual information. And I definitely understand that because I'm always gathering lots of different, like literally, if you went through my search history on YouTube, I probably watched like 4 hours of content of just like mostly like self-help and intellectual discussion and philosophy and stuff like that every single day. And I think that's the ST consume, right?
Right. I resonate with what you said earlier about like you got like Jack and then everyone's are respecting you. And
Yeah.
then before that, no one cared. It's like, it's
Yeah.
so, I hate that, man. It's so shallow. It's like so shallow.
Yeah.
But like, I had the same thing that happened to me too. Like I got like really ripped at one point. Like I'm an NT nerd, right? But I got Jack at one point. Now I started getting like dates and I started like getting like gym bro buddies and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is so pathetic. I hate it, you know? But it's kind of like also like needing to acknowledge like what like reality is. And it's like, yeah, it's like if you have the SF kind of like covered, then people are more than happy to listen to you. But if you don't have the SF covered, no one gives a shit about you, you know? Like even like
Yeah.
David Chan talks about Bill Nye, the science guy. You know, he's a nerd, right? But he has this like this freaking science show like for kids, and it's like freaking awesome. And now he's like SF popular, right? So you know, if you don't have
Yeah.
the like SF singing song and dance, it doesn't have to be fitness, right? But you need to have like something like cool going on for you, and no one gives a shit about you, and you're not worth listening to, right? Which is freaking like annoying, but unfortunately, that's how like life works, right? But so I want to touch on to the sexual modality since you brought it up already.
Yeah.
You are visual and you're tester and visual. That's why you're not into more the kinesthetic stuff, because you're more going to be attracted to the testing and the visual. Now the tester stuff is smell essentially, right? So a lot of testers love to eat like a variety of food. Do you see yourself like being obsessed with like trying all sorts of different tastes in food?
So that's where I had a hard time understanding why I'm extroverted sensory, not introverted sensory, because originally I thought I was an ENTP with introverted sensing in the demon state, because I'm very, but I also saw another ISTP that was slightly different than me. I forgot his name. He was like, it was like all red background and stuff like that.
Yes. I know.
Yeah, that he was describing how he's more picky and he's been picked on for like being more picky with his food. I definitely am the same way of like, I don't know, I might have sensory processing disorder because like I don't like overstimulation of my senses. So like anything that is super overly flavorful, I think I find gross because like the intensity. I mean, even when I was a kid, like fireworks, I had such a good sense of hearing that fireworks were like too loud for me. And I was like screaming underneath a blanket because of how it felt like my ears were going to be blown out because of fireworks. And so that's what I didn't really understand is that I'm not that adventurous when it comes to like the physical stuff.
Okay, hold on. So
Yeah.
The firecracker stuff makes sense because it's auditory and you are not auditory, of course. But yes, but what about your sense of smell? Do you have a very strong sense of smell? Like, are you very sensitive to smell?
Yes. I guess that is something because like I like perfumes and like eau de parfum. Like I like right now I'm using Dior. I like how that smells, and I'm very disgusted by a lot of different smells. Like I can like there's certain smells that I just can't handle.
Yeah.
And I used to think that that's like a sensory, like it sounds like an INFJ thing to me, like, you know, like, or like an INTJ, like an inferior SE thing. But I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it could just be an overactive display of being able to, like, I'm taking in too much information of the SE. If I'm even visualizing that right. I'm very sensitive to smell, taste, texture. Texture is a big thing for me. I might like this way something tastes, but if it has a certain texture, like vegetables, most vegetables that I eat, like the crunch and the slimy texture I can't handle at all.
I think with your extrovert sensing, I think you can find the best tasting stuff. So I guess you would be more picky because of your strong smell. You know which one is like the best smelling one or the best tasting one. So why would you deviate if you've already found the best, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like in relation to like the I like, you know, like traditional FI stuff, like of like I like this or I like that. I think that I have an easier time understanding what I don't like before I know what I like. And I think, and what's weird is that there's been a lot of things in my life that I think I've processed backwards, kind of,
Yeah.
because like even a weird thing about me is that even in like kindergarten, when I was learning how to write my name, this is reported from the teacher, I wrote my name backwards. I literally wrote my entire name backwards. And so I think that I almost process things like backwards in a way, like it's not really conscious, but it's like subconscious. And so yeah, I think that things go backwards with me, and maybe it's related to a big picture sense because I always want people to tell me the big picture. Like if I'm trying to learn something, right, I prefer somebody give me a big picture kind of trailer as to what I'm going to be learning before I learn it, and then I can delve into the details of what I'm learning. Where and I don't like it when people just go on like long rants or like listing things over and over again without actually like telling me in advance why I should care. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like why,
you don't like the
why should I
SI
care
then?
about this?
You don't like the SI. That's what you're saying.
No.
Okay. Um, yeah.
But I like things organized. I just like knowing ahead of time what I'm going to be indulging in. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like why like sell me on why I need to hear this. You know what I mean?
Right. Because like with extrovert sensing, you want the highlights. So give you the highlights
Yeah,
first. Yeah, yeah. Give you the highlights
that's
first.
funny.
Yeah, give you the
That's
highlights first,
funny.
and then you'll listen to the rest once you've gotten the preview of the highlights. Um,
That's wait. That highlight thing that resonated. That's funny because I've never really liked watching sports, and I think that's mainly because I'd rather play them than watch them. Like I'd rather like not that I actually like playing football, but like I've never been interested in football. Fighting has been interesting to watch for me, but I would never actually want to be the fighting, like because I don't like fist fights. Like that's not something that I would ever purposely engage in. I think that's mainly because I know that I can lose my temper and I don't want to like face an assault charge or something like that. But I wouldn't. Where was I getting with that? I just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? I'm sorry.
we're talking about highlights.
Highlights. Yes. So I am always looking for like, give me the rundown, like give me like the basics. And like I remember even watching like YouTube highlights of football. I mean, like, this is interesting to me. The best parts of the game, they're interesting. But I wouldn't want to watch the whole process of the whole game because it's like 2 hours long or 3 hours long. And I always like until your videos, like that's the only time I've like truly buckled down, like watched a full hour of a video.
Yeah.
Like for the interviews, because it's like always like it's like always changing and like hitting different points.
Yeah.
Before I started watching your videos, it was very difficult for me to watch anything over 20 minutes,
Yeah.
basically. That wasn't like summarized and like I don't know. I think that whole thing of wanting to watch the highlights all the time is
Yeah.
very, very, very relatable.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Some people get up, before the interview, you're like, oh, people are like, attacking you for like, changing the channel so much. I'm like, well, it's my style's for people like you, like, yeah, some people don't want to like talk about the same shit for like an hour because it's boring, right? So
Exactly.
yeah. There was something that you said earlier that I wanted to touch on, but I forgot. So I'll talk about the NT sleep now. So your sleep last, it's NT and it's double masculine. It's NITI. So it's like the figuring out part that you have last. So would you say that's kind of like a struggle for you, especially since you're pretty young still, like to figure out something? Even though you're like an ISTP, which is super weird because ISTPs are supposed to be really good at figuring things out. But your specific type, you kind of sacrifice the figuring out stuff part for getting along with people better, which is great. It's not a bad thing. But you did sacrifice that. So how do you see that figuring out part like being a challenge, like you're thinking things through long-term, especially NI, right? So NI is like long-term planning and like what works for you with your TI. So what has your struggles been like with like sleep loss and like not thinking things through?
Can you give me like one more like concrete example of like what that looks like?
Okay, I have to think. Okay, how about this?
All
I'll
right.
ask you another question and we'll come back here so I can think of something. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll ask you about being info dominant. Okay, so
Okay.
you're info dominant, you're not energy dominant, so you are obsessed with accuracy of information. Talk about, and that is more important to you than preserving your energy. Accuracy
Yep.
is more important than energy management. So can you talk about that, like your obsession with information?
Yeah. I mean, I'm borderline like OCD about information being correct and stuff like that. Like, especially if I know, like, I mean, my energy, I definitely don't, I have a lot of energy, I feel like I have a lot of like excess energy. And sometimes that's bad. Like sometimes it turns into like anxiousness, which turns into anger and irritableness. But I do see a pattern with my sleep last of like literal like not processing things, and then I kind of just burn out of things. I think that I tend to like, especially in projects and like new ideas and stuff like that, I just consume, and I'm like just constantly speedily going through something. And I've even done this with relationships in the past. This last with my wife, that was like the one where I kind of chose to slow down. We both had that problem. And we both slowed down and became friends first, and then we ended up dating, and then we ended up getting married. Whereas in the past relationships, I kind of just, oh, tell me everything about your life on like the first 2 dates or 3 dates. You know what I mean? I kind of just sped through things. So I think that my whole life has been kind of a sprint versus a long distance thing. So like my whole life is kind of just sprinting, falling over, and getting back up, and sprinting again, falling over, sprinting again. And I think that's the play sleep dichotomy of sleep last. I've always definitely identified with the metaphor of my whole life being a sprinter, including my physical ability. Like I'd rather sprint than to run long distance. I'd rather sprint a fast 100 meters than to go a mile. You know what I mean? And that's what I did in swim. I was always doing the sprints and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah. So I think that I definitely, sprinting is like the biggest thing, like not long distance, but sprinting, which I attribute long distance to sleep first, right? Of like preserving your energy. I'm not really aware of my energy. I think that's also it. Like, I feel like I'm not as aware of like where my energy level is at. I just know that I have energy to burn through. And so it's kind of like if my energy was a battery symbol on a phone, I don't realize that I'm low battery until it hits low battery, 5% left. You know what I mean? Like I just go, and then I'm not really monitoring it. I'm not really preserving it. Whereas a sleep person might, I don't know, I'm imagining they're preserving it. They're like, oh, I just used 10%, gotta take a break or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they're preserving themselves throughout the day, but I don't typically do that. I kind of just go until I just pursue whatever I'm doing until I'm tired.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I fell asleep last year, so I get I get you. Um, I found a concrete question for you about NT last. Okay, so tell me if this resonates with you or not. I don't know if it will, but this is what I kind of saw, especially with the sleep loss ISTPs. So because of your specific type, I would say you want instant gratification. So if you're looking for like a tribe dynamic, then because of the need of instant gratification, you might want to take something now that would either elevate you to be the best or make you unique. But long-term wise, you haven't figured out that by doing that, you just fucked up your relationship with people. So I'll give you an example. Like let's say let's say there's like a party or something, and then someone is trying, it's like the birthday boy or birthday girl, whatever. So they need to be a star because it's their freaking birthday. and then you decide to have instant gratification and get all the attention for yourself instead of giving the birthday boy or birthday girl the attention because it's their freaking birthday, right? So you took from their birthday instead of letting them have the spotlight. So that's kind of like a good example of like NT last not being used because you didn't think long-term wise, your relationship with that person would be better because you let the person, as a matter of fact, to make even better, if you use your FE and be like, birthday boy, you're the man or you're the girl, everyone cheer up, let's make a song, like you're like pumping up this person, right? So then that gives you like tribe points because you figured out how to build up tribe points, right? But if you were like a douchebag and you didn't think things through, then you would be like, no, look at me, look at me, I'm the center of attention, like look at what I did, and then now you just like piss everyone off because you're like being an attention whore when the attention should go to the birthday person. Does that make sense? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's how I was in the past. Like, I think that's how I was like maybe in middle school. It's definitely middle school. I think I was an attention whore in middle school. Like I was constantly like wanting everybody's attention. I was kind of a class clown a lot of the time. Like I kind of earned myself that title of the class clown in middle school and some of high school. High school, I don't know. High school, I was a little more like, I wasn't as motivated in high school. Like I was like in middle school, I was like a perfectionist and I was like always getting like A+ every single time. And it was private middle school. So it was even more intense than like I honestly did more difficult for my age group work in middle school than I did in high school. And then there was also a sense of like, crap, I thought this actually counted for something. I thought middle school, for some reason in my head, I thought middle school grades were going to impact my high school. Cause I think that's what my parents tried to convince me of, to try to make me do better. And then I go into high school and I'm like, well, crap, that didn't help me at all. Like middle school, like other than like building the skills, middle school didn't help me for high school. And then, yeah, I ended up figuring out that I didn't really like traditional education long term. Like I like aspects of it, but like traditional education is not my favorite way of learning. You know what I mean? I prefer more discussion, Socratic dialogue and stuff like that. And I found that school didn't often give that to me. Like I never actually got to discuss things. It was just a lecture and you're just supposed to write down information. And I hated that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of a tangent. I don't even know where I went from that.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. Yeah, that's what I always like. If I like this, like if I were to give advice to young people now, I would tell them in like middle school and high school, yeah, you should just freaking make friends and like date and stuff. Like that's like have fun, because like you only get one shot at that shit. In the school stuff, it doesn't really matter until your last year. So you don't really have to try to like your last year in high school, So, so but anyways, let's cover your blast next. Your blast is NF. NIFE. It's third, so you have access to it. How do you personally and you have masculine NI also, so that's like it's an interesting part of you. So it would make you feel intuitive because of that masculine NI.
That's what that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Good. Continue. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, and then I would just say like a lot of ISTPs might type themselves as an INFJ because of that masculine NI, right? It's like so strong, like it's so obvious, and it's third, right? Like typically your first tree function is pretty strong, so it's third, it's masculine. It's like right in your face, you can see it. Like you cannot.
Yeah.
If someone told you you're not intuitive, you would argue with them because
that's what
you can freaking see it at masculine NI. Like it's like right in your freaking face, right?
That's what I did when I got my results. I was like, how the heck are they not typing me as an intuitive? Yeah. Well, because in my head I was like, why am I not TI-NI? But then I realized that it was because of sleep and stuff like that, right? And the way that all works and stuff. But like, yeah, no, I definitely actually most of my identity is being intuitive. Like that's like most of my, like I mean, maybe is that because it's introverted? Like an introverted function is in part of my identity. Is that what it is?
I think it's easier to see your introvert function than your extrovert one. But the truth is, though, your identity is your extrovert and introvert function. They're both your identity. Yeah. So, like people say, oh, you don't know me, but people know you're outside. They know half your identity. You might not know that other half, which is actually like the problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Introverted intuition. Yeah. I mean, for a while I thought I was extroverted intuition just because I just thought I was like a pattern finder. I thought I was seeing a bunch of patterns. And I realized it's actually funny because I took an aptitude test called the Ames test in Texas. I went to Texas senior year with my dad, and I was just curious what my aptitudes were, and I was kind of in the process of discovering my personality. That's when I got into 16 personalities, and then I started getting into that stuff. So on my results, I actually got there's some interesting results. Instead of idea, they had two metrics. They had ideaphoria and they had foresight. Those were two of the metrics they used. Ideaphoria was like coming up with multiple different ideas and stuff like that. It's like more NE stuff. And then they had foresight, which I believe is more NI stuff. I scored very highly on foresight, but I didn't score that good on ideaphoria. Yet I still believed I was an NE user for the longest time. Kind of just ignored it. And so I think right there was one of the factual things of like being able to see like, yeah, and my whole entire intuitive identity is in seeing the future, right? Like I'm always like looking at the future, and honestly, my problem in life feels like it's not staying in the present. You know what I mean? Like it feels like I'm living in the future rather than living in the present. And that's not good. You should live in the present, reflect on the past, and plan for the future, not live in it. And so I feel like I've always lived in the future. Well, not always. I guess that was more something I developed when I was like 18, 19, 20, 21. Like I think before that, I wasn't really that much living in the future now that I think about it, especially when I was a kid, because I wasn't really thinking about the future when I was a little kid. I was more just like doing whatever was right in front of me. I was actually a daredevil when I was a kid. So like, I guess it is funny, the ISTP stereotypes of like daredevil type acrobat, like trying to like do things that are like crazy. Like my dad thought I was going to be some kind of like daredevil or motocross or something like that, because of how much I got stand on like bicycles, and I learned how to ride a two-wheeler at like 3 years old or 4 years old or something like that. I had some really early sensory milestones of like being able to do things. Like when I was a baby, I learned how to walk at like 8 or 9 months. And that's like a very early time compared. People have said that that's a bad thing and that I like skipped crawling and that somehow ruined my brain. But I kind of refuse to believe that, just because like it doesn't make sense. Like I feel like it's just like a speedy thing of like speeding to get to the next result. I feel like I basically skipped over crawling. I went straight from not moving to bear crawling. Like I didn't touch my knees to the ground, and then I went to walking. And then I went to running, and then I went to falling down a hill and hitting my head on a rock. Literally, one time I was running down this hill as a little like toddler, like a 1 or 2 year old, and I landed my head on a small rock that got stuck into my head. Like it was like small, but I have like a scar from it. You won't be able to see on the camera, but like it's like somewhere up here. Yeah, I have a scar from it. It's like a little rock, and that just it's kind of funny because it's like a metaphor for like me running so fast that I can't put on the brakes, and then I kind of just fall on my face. It's kind of like my life story.
Yeah. I'm
sorry, that was a rant.
Well, okay. The first thing I noticed when you were just saying that stuff is you can definitely blast. So you blasted earlier, and then you channel change very aggressively to multiple different topics. It's definitely like an T-ish, and then you have like crazy ST report, but you only reported the highlights. So ST, right? Because like not SI. So yeah, I was like, okay, I think you're definitely typed correctly. Because like you just spelled out all your animals and functions just like in that little spiel that you did. All right, dude. I have final 2 questions for you, and then we'll wrap up the interview. Okay.
Okay.
The first one I want to ask you is, now that you know your type, like what do you want to get out of it? Like what do you want to? Because like knowing your type is just a start, right? Like now you know your map. What ideally is it that you would like to get better at based on your type? Like what would the ideal situation be for you?
I mean, I guess the top 2 things would literally be related to my animals, of wanting to get better at social interactions, being able to, well, specifically not even social, because I can do social interactions, right? Like I'm not socially enough, but I know what's going on, and I can socialize with people, and people like me. Like I've been able to build popularity with people. and my dad my dad's like a pastor, and he's known like pretty much everybody in my entire city of like 100,000 people. Like he knows like thousands of people, and so lots of people know me, and then I also make my own fame, you know what I mean? But anyways, my biggest thing is the sensitivity to emotions in more close relationships, because I can like be the FE in like so surface level, like when I'm like just meeting someone, I might be like very like soft or very thing, but as I get to know someone, I think it's almost like a thing of like, I think it comes with the masculine TI of like wanting, like it's like I love them, so I want to like make sure that they're on the right path, or like it's like this paternal thing of like wanting to make sure that they know the right information. And so I end up prioritizing the TI and just like slapping over the face with the logic over the softness of the FE. And that's what my wife has been teaching me, because I can be kind of aggressive with how I explain things to her, and it hurts her feelings. And then I'm like, well, like at first I'm like, well, I don't care about the feelings. Like I like, you know what I mean? Like my first thing is like, well, who facts don't care about your feelings, you know what I mean? But then it's like, but at the same time, I guess there is something to emotion, because without, what I've realized is that it's not always what I say, it's how I say it. And that's what I've realized, because I've always said what, right? Like I've always been pretty accurate with what I say. And like everything that I say seems to have a lot of factual backing and stuff like that. And even my guesses tend to be pretty accurate. But the problem is how I say things, whether it's coming across as arrogant, whether it's coming across as abrasive, whether it's coming across as too blunt or something like that. And so I've had to kind of learn softening my language to the point where it's not offending people. And I mean, there was a certain point where like I think in high school, I kind of had fun offending people, because I thought it was kind of funny when like they would like be so offended about stuff that I didn't find offensive. Like mainly just like memes or like things like that. Like it wasn't anything like super like inappropriate, but it was just like I think I kind of made fun of people that were overly prude, or like that didn't want to like hear the goofy jokes and stuff, and they weren't even that bad. And so I kind of just pushed and kind of like put that the offensive memes out there and stuff like that, and they would get offended, and I would kind of just laugh, because I'm like, well, you have no right. Like, I think in my head I thought you don't have a right to be offended over something so benign, but in reality I think that I've been learning that I don't get to determine what people feel. I don't get to determine what's right for other people to feel. And so I've learned over time that like you actually have to be able to honor how people feel about things. And I mean, it's easy to talk about how I'm learning it, but it's also hard. It's even harder to implement that like in the reality. I think that's definitely something that I've been learning, is how to try to be more soft. But I also need more help. Like I need more practical things of like, what are the steps to get there? And I've watched some of your videos. Of course, I just realized that I'm an ISTP now, right? Like it's my first day of realizing that I'm an ISTP, and realizing that all of these things are making more sense. And so I guess my next step is just to dive deeper into what the ISTP needs to learn, you know what I mean, archetypally. And then also, and then I guess the second thing is, the second thing would be teaching, being able to teach in a more organized manner specifically. It's not like I can't teach. It's that I think that my style of teaching, and it even reflects in my sales strategy, like how I sell with like consulting and solar, especially in the beginning, I'm kind of chaotic with how I do it. And if I were able to create a more fine-tuned, more less scattered way of teaching someone, then I feel like I could reach out. I could teach a lot more people. Like, sure, I could teach maybe an ENFP, NETE, right? Like you might be able to thrive in that, like that scattered form of teaching. But I feel like if I, especially in sales specifically, I have to be able to fine tune my organized blast of NF of like, how do I'm encouraging people, right? Because that's what NF blast is, like inspiration and like telling you can do it type of thing. And I feel like I feel like I'm doing that, but then people don't take it like that, like, right? Because I'm not like very like the way I say it, like I try to say something that's encouraging, and then it comes across as like neutral or even negative, right? Like it comes across as less value than it sounded in my head, right? It's kind of the stereotype of like the ISTP husband, like in shows and movies or whatever. That's like, what did I do? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think I identify with that of like, I think that I'm being helpful, but I'm not. And I've had to think hard about that, about how I can fine tune my approach to be more SF popular, you know what I mean? Or NF popular, whatever, being able to, and teaching is something that I'm interested in. And I've actually wanted to be, it's like some kind of, like, even when I was little, I wanted to be a financial advisor, because I really am good with like money and like finance. That is my sensory thing that I'm good at, is money. Like I'm able to manage. I mean, I'm very frugal and very good at knowing what works with money. I do a lot of research into how to make money, how to invest money, how to save. Like I've done all of the bits of research on money management, and obviously I don't know everything. I'm not going to do the Dunning-Kruger and say that I know everything, but I have researched quite a few throughout my entire life. And so I am able to do that well. And I feel like I can get stuck in that. Like, I think that sometimes I get stuck in my saviors. Like, I definitely identify with getting stuck in my saviors of like, well, why can't I just make a bunch of money and plan for the future and do all this stuff? Why do I have to focus on the emotional aspect? And I know deep down inside that I do have to focus on the emotional aspect, because that's the part that I'm lacking. But at the same time, I also have the motivation to want to improve in that. Like, so self-improvement is very big for me. Like, I want to be able to, but at the same time, it's like I find it very difficult to actually get there. And I need help with like figuring out practical ways to get there.
Gotcha, man. It's
Sorry,
funny
that
you
was a
brought up
lot.
the offensive memes earlier, that you were like,
Yeah.
it's like I made some videos before where I interviewed people and I said some offensive stuff, and like people with like FE or EJs are like upset at me and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, especially that time where I said like I like racist jokes and stuff. Like people got like upset at me for like saying that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I like the David Chappelle kind of jokes and whatnot.
Yeah.
The racial stereotypes. I felt like they were harmless, but some people got offended by that. But anyways, after I said that, I got hazed by a lot of people. But the funny thing is, after I said that, a lot of ISTPs are sending me those kind of jokes too. Like on my, so I was like, like reading what they said, that they're like, this guy also likes what I like, like. So I thought it was kind of funny, like how it worked that way. All right. To wrap up the interview, do you have any final questions for me? And then we'll wrap it up.
I think we covered everything.
Yeah, we covered.
I think we covered pretty much most of it. I'll probably be like, after the interview, I'll probably be like, crap, I forgot to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because it always comes to me after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, it's always like, oh, there was something I missed. But I don't think so. I can't think of anything that would be.
Just email me your question when it pops up. All right, dude.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah, thanks for doing the interview and coming out and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, peace out, man.
Thanks. Thank you, Kendrick.
Yeah, for sure.